This man controlled 90% of America's oil. And when the United States government finally shattered his empire to stop him, something absurd happened. He became even richer. This is the story of John D. Rockefeller, the most hated businessman in America and the world's first billionaire. It's a story about ambition with no brakes, and about where that kind of ambition actually comes from. It begins in 1839 in rural New York, with a boy born into poverty. His mother, Eliza, was a devout Baptist who believed in honesty, hard work, and God. His father believed in none of it. William Avery Rockefeller, known around town as Devil Bill, was a traveling con artist who sold colored water as a cure for cancer to the dying, and posed as a deaf-mute peddler to eavesdrop on farmers so he could swindle them later. He brought the same philosophy home. He openly boasted that he cheated his own sons every chance he got just to make them sharp. The lesson young John absorbed was simple and permanent. Trust no one. The world is a battlefield, and you are either the predator or the prey. Then, in 1849, after being indicted for a violent assault, Devil Bill simply vanished. He took a new name, married a second woman while still married to Eliza, and lived a double life for the next 50 years. He left his family penniless. John never forgot. At 16, John became the man of the house, quiet, intense, and obsessed with the one thing that had never lied to him: numbers. He took a 3-month bookkeeping course and landed a job as an assistant bookkeeper for about 50 cents a day. He was meticulous to the point of obsession, recording every penny he earned or spent in a small notebook he called Ledger A. Through pure self-denial, he saved $800. But to break into real business, he needed more capital. So he did the thing that must have cost him something to do. He asked his father for a loan. Devil Bill agreed to lend him $1,000, then charged his own son 10% interest and warned that he might demand it back at any moment. John took the money without arguing. He went into business with an older partner named Morris Clark, selling produce: beans, pork, grain, safe and steady. Then, in 1859, the world changed. Prospectors struck oil in Pennsylvania, and the city of Cleveland became a refining hub almost overnight. Against his cautious partner's wishes, Rockefeller brought in a talented chemist named Samuel Andrews and moved into refining oil. But the partnership couldn't hold. Rockefeller wanted to borrow aggressively and expand. Clark was terrified of debt and tried to rein him in. By 1865, they were deadlocked, and they agreed to settle it the brutal way. The refinery would go to whichever partner bid highest at a private auction. The bidding climbed: $2,000, $10,000, $25,000. Clark could not imagine a 25-year-old having the nerve or the money to keep going. He bid $50,000, certain it was over. Rockefeller answered $72,500. Clark realized the younger man would bid until he was bankrupt or dead, and he folded. Rockefeller later called it the day that determined his career. Now in control, Rockefeller applied his ledger a mind to the filthy, chaotic oil business. At the time, refiners only wanted kerosene for lamps and simply dumped the rest: gasoline, naphtha, tar, straight into the river. Rockefeller looked at that river and saw money flowing away. So he stopped wasting anything. Andrews found ways to turn the leftover sludge into lubricants and paraffin wax. He bought his own forest to make his own barrels, and built his own kilns to dry the wood. By cutting out every middleman, he could undersell every competitor and still turn a profit. By the age of 30, the bookkeeper owned the largest refinery in Cleveland. Most men would have stopped there. Rockefeller looked at the hundreds of smaller refineries around him and saw not rivals, but a mess he intended to clean up by owning all of it. On January 10, 1870, he incorporated the Standard Oil Company. And to swallow the industry, he didn't go after the oil wells. He went after the railroads that carried the oil. The railroads were locked in a price war, desperate for guaranteed business, and Rockefeller offered them exactly that: enormous, reliable shipments in exchange for a secret arrangement. The result was a scheme with 3 weapons. First, rebates, a hidden discount on everything Standard shipped. Second, intelligence. The railroads handed Rockefeller detailed reports on where his rivals were shipping and to whom. And the killing blow? The drawback. Every time a competitor shipped a barrel of oil, the railroad took part of that competitor's money and paid it directly to Rockefeller. He could then call a rival into his office and make a calm, devastating offer. Sell to me now for cash, or Standard Oil stock, or keep competing and go bankrupt. Most of them sold. In the span of a few months in early 1872, the campaign reached its peak. Refinery by refinery, Rockefeller absorbed his competition. 22 of Cleveland's 26 refineries surrendered in under 3 months in what became known as the Cleveland Massacre. Then, the secret deal leaked, and the public exploded. Oilmen burned Rockefeller in effigy and marched with torches, and under the pressure, the Pennsylvania legislature revoked the charter behind the scheme. The public believed they had won. They hadn't. By the time the deal was dead, Rockefeller already owned Cleveland, and Cleveland was only the beginning. What he did next became the blueprint for monopoly itself. If a rival in another state refused to sell, Rockefeller cut off its oxygen. He bought the companies that made the oak barrels. He bought the warehouses. He bought the plants that produced the acid needed to refine oil. Suddenly his competitors found that even if they could refine, they couldn't find a barrel to ship it in or the chemicals to treat it. One last group of independents tried to escape, building a long pipeline across Pennsylvania to pump their oil straight to the coast and bypass his railroads entirely. Rockefeller fought it with scorched earth, buying strips of land to block construction, tying it up in lawsuits, and grinding the independents down until they were exhausted and broke. Then he bought their pipeline for a fraction of its cost. By 1879, the bookkeeper controlled roughly 90% of all oil refining in America. But ruling that empire created a new problem. Under the law of the time, a company in one state couldn't own stock in a company in another. So Standard Oil was a fragile web of separate firms held together by secret handshakes. So in 1882, Rockefeller's lawyers invented something the world had never seen: the trust. They pooled the stock of dozens of companies into a single entity controlled by a handful of trustees, a legal ghost. If a regulator asked who owned a given refinery, the paperwork led nowhere. From his headquarters at 26 Broadway in New York, Rockefeller wasn't just refining oil, he was optimizing the world down to the last drop. He was famously obsessed with exactly that, once ordering a plant to use 39 drops of solder to seal a kerosene can instead of 40, because 40 was waste and 38 leaked. Multiplied across millions of cans, that single drop saved a fortune, and his ambition was global. He flooded Asia with iconic blue tins of kerosene and gave away millions of cheap lamps in China. Because once a man depends on your lamp, he has to buy your oil for the rest of his life. He drove the price of kerosene down so far that for the first time in history, ordinary people could afford to light their homes after dark. But as the empire peaked, the man behind it was falling apart. Rockefeller developed alopecia and lost all of his hair, his head, his eyebrows, his eyelashes, and took to wearing a rotating set of wigs. His nerves wrecked his digestion, and he lived for a time on little more than crackers and milk. And while he hid inside his fortune, a new kind of enemy was sharpening her pen. Her name was Ida Tarbell, a journalist whose own father had been an independent oilman crushed by Standard Oil. For 2 years she worked like a detective, tracking down discarded employees, digging out buried contracts, mapping the rebates, the drawbacks, and the spy networks, and published it all in McClure's magazine between 1902 and 1904. Her exposé gave the public a face to hate. As its capstone, she also dragged Rockefeller's father into the light, revealing his career as a con artist and fraud. A few years later, the press uncovered the rest of the story: that Devil Bill had spent decades living a secret double life under the alias Dr. Livingston, though by the time it broke, the old man had already died. The mask of the pious deacon was gone, and the public's awe curdled into pure hatred. It also handed a bold young president his ammunition. Theodore Roosevelt launched an antitrust war that ground through the courts for years. And on May 15, 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered the verdict. Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly, and it had to be destroyed. The empire was broken into 34 separate companies, fragments that would grow into giants like Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron. The world assumed Rockefeller had finally lost. He hadn't. When the trust was split apart, he didn't lose his ownership. He simply held a massive share of stock in all 34 new companies, now freed from the legal shackles of the trust. The value of those individual stocks soared, and as the world shifted from the kerosene lamp to the gasoline engine, his wealth exploded. By 1916, by most accounts, John D. Rockefeller had become the world's first billionaire. At a time when the average American earned a few $100s a year, he had outlasted his father, his competitors, and the United States government itself. But there was one last enemy he could neither buy nor crush: time. In his final decades, he hired some of the first professional public relations men to scrub the blood off the Standard Oil name, reinventing himself in public as a kindly grandfather who handed out shiny dimes to children. He founded the University of Chicago and the Rockefeller Foundation, funding medical research that helped wipe out diseases like hookworm and yellow fever. Was it guilt, a genuine change of heart, or the final masterful con of a man who understood that history is written by the winners? We can't know. What we do know is that on May 23, 1937, the machine finally stopped. John D. Rockefeller died at 97, falling just short of his lifelong goal to reach 100, but having blown past his other youthful goal, to make a fortune by a margin almost beyond comprehension. As he himself once put it, "I believe the power to make money is a gift from God, to make money and still more money, and to use the money I make for the good of my fellow man according to the dictates of my conscience."